Okay, again, I'm going to write out the next thing we're going to do in smaller, in a smaller area. But what we do next is what we do to get the equation of the line if we're given 2 points. Well, if we're given 2 points, just write a generic fundamental triangle and put a line through it. Okay? Now, got to label our points, so we're going to call the first point here x1, y1, and we'll call this point x2, y2. Now this is, neither of these is an xy. Remember that xy stands for any point on the line. And we don't include an xy because right now all we want to do is find the slope of the line. So now we've got y2 minus y1, and we've got x2 minus x1. The slope is then m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Fundamental triangle instantly gives us the slope. Of course, if we have numbers, we plug them in. We find the rise numerically, find the run. We all know how to do that. Well, once we've done this, we can just use this, can't we? We can substitute whatever we get when we calculate this slope for m, and we can use the point x1, y1, so we have now the slope at a point on our graph. Okay? If you wanted to use x2, y2 instead of x1, y1, so this would be y2 and this would be x2, that's okay too. It's going to give you exactly the same equation. When you solve it for y, you're going to get exactly the same thing you would if you used this point. So it doesn't matter which point of the two you use, it's still a line through that point with the slope you get here. Okay, so let's just, and then, you know, the other thing we can do, of course, is we can replace m here with the expression y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's one expression for the slope. So we don't necessarily have to compute that. If we want to do a formula just in symbols, we can replace m with this, and what do we get? Well, we get this, don't we? You know, we still got y minus y1, we've still got x minus x1, but now our slope m has been replaced by y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and here we have a formula so that if we have the coordinates of 2 points, we'll have x1, y1, x2, and y2, so we can substitute for every one of these symbols except the x and the y, which are going to be the variables in which our equation is going to be expressed. Okay, so, well, you know, I've written it out here, but I've pretty much told you everything. So here we have, we're given 2 points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So I say here, all we have to do is find the slope, pick one point, and I didn't complete my word one. Pick one point and do the previous, that is, do this. We can do that, okay? So when we find the slope, we're going to get rise y2 minus y1 over run x2 minus x1. And then we're going to write that down. We know that y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where m is the slope. It's no less true now than it was over here. But now we have the expression for m, and I've indicated that already. So we replace m with that expression, and now we have a formula. And if we want to just use the formula, well, do an example. Line through 2, -5, 7, -9. Okay, well, let's let this be x1, y1. Let this be x2, y2. Didn't have room to write it all out, but it's implicit. Okay, so now we then, well, we then have y minus y1. Well, y1 is -5, so we have y minus -5 equals what? y2 minus y1. That's -9 minus -5. Divided by x2 minus x1, that's 7 minus 2. Equals x minus x1. Well, that's going to be x minus 2. Now do be careful. One person had it almost right. Everything was good, except they used the x from this ordered pair and the y from this one. Okay? Well, you got to use the x and the y from the same point. Okay? Because we're basing the equation on that point. Okay? And that's clear. So bottom line there is you just got to be careful about your bookkeeping. You got to write everything down. Another person wrote everything down just really well, but left the equal sign out. So they were going to be in trouble when it came time to simplify this and to solve for y. You don't have an equal sign, you can't really solve for anything. Okay, and that's obvious. And after you made a couple mistakes like that, and you see me make mistakes like that too, you get a little more careful about them. You get the bookkeeping right. Okay, well, if we've plugged all these numbers in correctly, then we have an equation we can solve for y. Now, the first thing I did was, on the left-hand side, y minus -5 became y plus 5. And -9 minus -5 became -9 plus 5. Everything else stayed the same. But then in the next step, we simplified -9 plus 5. We got -4. 7 minus 2 is 5. So now we have -4/5. So we have y plus 5 equals this, which is -4/5 times x minus 2. And then it's getting a little small down here. We did the arithmetic, and I got a few dots here because I didn't do all the steps, but they're very similar. Between here and here, I added -5 to both sides. That's where this -5 came from. And then I multiplied through this binomial using the distributive law. I got -4/5 x, and then -4/5 times -2 is 8/5. Okay? Then, one more step of simplification. I got -4/5 x minus 17/5, because 8/5 minus 5 is -17/5. So that my equation became y equals -4/5 x minus 17/5. Now remember, the very first thing we did was we worked on the operations for fractions, okay, in the MCR course. So we expect everybody to be good with fractions. You had worksheets, you had all kinds of stuff that showed you what to do with fractions. And that's extremely important. Rational functions are coming up in the not too distant future, and you really have to understand fractions. You have to understand them to do this, and you have to understand them to do polynomial over polynomial fractions. Okay? So, this is our equation. Now, we can verify that this equation is correct, if it is, because I haven't checked my arithmetic. We can put the coordinates 2, -5 into this equation. So y would be -5 and x would be 2. Well, if x is 2, -4/5 times 2 is -8/5, and -8/5 and -17/5 is -25/5, which 25 divided by 5 is 5, which is -5, which is what y had better be. And if x is 7, you get -4/5 of 7, which is -28/5, and then minus 17/5. -28 minus 17 is -45, and -45/5, -45 divided by 5 is -9. So y should be -9, and it is. So we've verified it, and you do have to be sure that you understand that verification step.